Now welcome to the absolutely stunning, amazing Wolfhound Fisheries. Now just over there is Santa Pod drag strip, but you won't believe it because this is just a beautiful fishery setting, beautiful mature woodland, and the fishing here is incredible. But what I'm going to show you is a simple little rig that is going to help you catch more fish shallow. Now there's nothing magic in terms of bait. We've just got some 6mm fishery pellets, and we're just going to feed them in a pretty much simple style really. We're just going to feed 4 to 8 pellets all the time, every 30 seconds, just constantly ringing that dinner bell. And this rig is gonna just allow me to capitalise on that, because I'm just gonna try and replicate those 2 or 3 pellets plopping in on the surface with this little setup, no problem. So up at this end we've got white zip, absolutely brilliant for this time of year. And then probably the most important, well there's 2 really important bits actually, but I've got probably 1 metre, maybe even longer, maybe 1.5 metres of line. That's just 0.17. 1.5 metres, and that allows me to get out to the end of my pole and swing the hook bait right out past the pole tip. I'm keeping the fish away from a pole tip. It's really important, that is. And as long as you do it right with the right float and everything, you can stay in direct contact with it so that when you do get a bite, you're not going to miss it. The next crucial part is the float. Now this is a brand new one from us, and it's called the CLUNK. Now you remember we did the big head, and the big head's a brilliant float, but it did need some shot, so you could use it with a bulk down, or you could use it, but I was finding myself using it with a bulk under the float all the time. And I thought, why don't we just do a float where you don't need to put any shot on, because I'm using this float for carp fishing, and I'm just putting the shot under my float anyway. So we set about designing this float, the CLUNK, and it's got this steel stem in it which allows it to self-cock, so I don't have to put any shot on the rig at all. Now this is a 0.3, we do a 0.3 and a 0.5, and even with no shot on, it'll support a 6mm or an 8mm pellet, which is obviously what you're going to be using. And it's just a brilliant little float. It's got a 5mm hollow tip as well, so even if you've got eyes as bad as me, you can see it. It's just a brilliant little float, and like I say, it's self-cocking. There's nothing to tangle, it's just brilliant, and it's just got enough weight in the float, so when I swing it out past, I can keep that all important tight line between the pole tip and the float, which is everything when it comes to hitting bites. Now below that, I use 12-inch hook lengths for this. I have done for a long time. There's 2 reasons. Firstly, I think that that's a good depth to catch them, whether it's mugging, shallow fishing. For this, I'm talking about proper carp, I'm not talking about F1s. I think that that's just a really good depth to catch them on, your normal commercials, not the really deep ones. That's 0.15, so 12 inches long, and I've got my float sat on those hook length loops above it. And then down at the business end, I've just got a size 16 Camasan animal feeder. It's a hook that I really like for carp fishing. I've just absolutely fell in love with it, and I've got a band on it. And then I'm either putting an 8mm pellet on or a 6mm, just depending. If I can get away with an 8mm and get bites on it, that's what I'll use, because it allows me a bit more weight in the rig to flick it out past. Now the key thing is how we're going to fish this. We've been feeding it for a little while. The fish are up for it, I can see it, so I don't think it's going to take us too long to get this video in the bag. Okay, so that's enough about the rig. Let's get on with some fishing. So I've set it initially 12 inches deep, a little CLUNK, and I've got a good metre of line above the float, like I talked about the rig. And I'm baiting with an 8mm pellet. The reason is I want a little bit of weight. I can put a 6mm on, of course I can, but I quite like having a bit of weight that just sends it out past the pole tip as well, and keeps me in a tight, more importantly, keeps me tight between the pole tip and the hook bait. So yeah, let's get on with it. Don't have to go too long today. I expect the fishing to be quite good, so there's no need to go too ridiculous. So we're going to fish it in and around sort of 12 metres. Of course, if it was in a match, you might have to go longer, 14, 15, 16 metres, but today we're not going to need to do that. Now, just because we've got a nice rig on that's going to pick these fish off, we still need to do the basics right. So always feed a couple of times just to get the swim prepared. You don't need to feed a lot, just a little bit, and then we're going to sneak that pole out there, and then we're just going to start the process of swinging it out. So what we're trying to do, because that float's self-cocking, it doesn't tangle, and I've got that long line, and what I'm doing, I'm just swinging it out nice and gently, and if I don't get a bite, in a few seconds, pick it up, and it's all about timing. You sort of pick it up, swing it back towards you, and then drop your pole, and the momentum will carry it forward like this. So we're making noise, but we're not making like slapping. Oh, look at that. Slapping at this time of year can be the kiss of death, because the fish just woke up. They're obviously wanting to come up, as there's a nice bit of sun today, not loads, but just enough. and the fish are coming to noise, but they don't. If you start slapping, sometimes it can actually spook them. They can be quite sensitive at this time of year. So actually using this rig, this longer rig, and just swinging it out past and plopping that pellet in can be just as effective, if not more effective, than slapping at this time of year. Don't get me wrong, there'll be some days where slapping works really well, but when they've just woke up like they have today, the water's still quite clear, I prefer, I've got a little margin spot here, I prefer using this long sort of stealthy rig, stealth shallow rig I'm going to call it, and swinging it out past the feed, and it can work wonders. Mainly for carp, but it does work for F1s, but you just got to have your wits about you to hit the bites. Oh, terrible bit of netting there, Joseph. But yeah, for F1s, you've just got to have your wits about you to hit the bites. There we go. Even worse bit of netting. There we go. Lovely fish. Whew. And this is great. Like when you just, you know, we've had a winter of hard fishing, a lot of rain and stuff, and these fish are ready. They're up for a bit of food. And especially on these prolific waters. So as soon as those 6 mils start going in, we can get some bites. Interestingly, I am using an 8 mil on the hook, purely for that little noise. I like the plop it makes, and obviously it gives me that weight like I talked about. So just as before, just because we've got a nice stealthy rig on, we've got to still get the fish back in the swim. And if you get your timing right, this bit makes the whole job easier, because you can get the fish in the swim before you even get your pole out there. Don't forget your margins. If you've got other swims on the go, this is a great time to feed them and get out there. And I've still got a bit of section behind me if I need to go a little bit longer, but at the minute, at the start of the session or start of this little film, we don't need to go out that far. Oh my god, that's how good that's how good it can be. That one mental. You know, we've done everything right. We've taken our time to get back out there. We've made sure we've fed a couple of times, and then we've swung that lovely stealthy rig in amongst the feed, or just past the feed even, and they're just, I'm not going to say easy to catch, but they can be a bit docile this time of year and can be quite easy to catch. Lovely fishing here at Wall Farm. We're just on the Islands Lake today, and it's just absolutely full of sort of 3 to 6 pound carp. Perfect sort of venue really for this sort of thing. Get him in the net. Great fishery. It's one of those places where, you know, there's a lovely little cafe here on site. Everything you need for a day's fishing. Specimen Lake, a couple of different match lakes. There's even a lake that's loads of silverfish in. There's barbel, there's all sorts in here. Really great place, and it's quiet and peaceful. It's lovely. Right, so we just caught 2 there, dead straight away. And let's get the feeding process running. Like I say, this is, you think, oh, I want to get straight back out there because I just caught one so fast. But the reason you caught one so fast is because you kept the pole away from the swim for a little bit. So just don't be worried about giving him a bit of free food without actually fishing there, because the whole process of this rig is that we're trying to pick them off. And sometimes having your pole not in the swim, oh, got a read on. Sometimes having your pole out of the swim is more important than actually having it in the swim. Look at that. That is exactly what I'm talking about. Look at that. Not missed a bite yet. I've had 3 fish, and every time I've sort of given it 2 or 3 feeds and just taken my time to get out there, and then delicately swung that stealthy CLUNK rig out there and got an instant response. Now, one thing I will say, when you are swinging or even slapping at this time, if they are responding to a bit of noise, leave your float stationary than what you would a little bit in the summer, because the fish are just waking up. They are quite slow still. I've noticed today that often the bites are coming after a few seconds. Like, you'd expect the bite to be instant, but it hasn't been today. You've been leaving it out there and it'll go after like 10 or 12 seconds sometimes, and I think that's just because they're swimming quite slowly. When an odd one keeps coming on the top, and they're ever so slow today, so I think that's just because they're just waking up. It's still, air temperature is only 10 today, but the fish are awake, which is the big thing. God, this one's going well. Stunning fish here on the island lake. Catch a few more because I'm enjoying this. I hope you are too. Interestingly, I think I mentioned in the rig that I use a 12-inch hook length. I do a lot of this sort of carp shallow fishing in the summer at like Shearsby Valley and stuff, and I just found that depth is very effective. And I think not having any loops down your line, whether it makes any difference or what, I don't know, but it just gives me a bit of confidence not having any loops to interfere with the fall of my hook bait. It's a confidence thing. And it's strong as well. Obviously the longer your hook length, the stronger it is because there's more stretch. Right, so we're not... Repeat the process. Just feeding 6mm pellets, which is probably like the norm for most of you. No, like I say, no rush whatsoever to get out there. If anything, I want to wait until I see a fish or an odd movement, because they are giving themselves away a bit today. There's see like a bit of water movement even. So we'll just look out there. And if you get your timings right, bites come pretty quick. And it's a lovely little plop when your pellet goes in and your little float. You can hear it, just a little dink. And at this time of year, that can be really attractive to the fish, rather than a load of commotion like in the summer when they want slapping and tapping and stuff. This time of year, being a bit more gentle and stealthy can really pay off. Still feed as normal because they're coming to the bait. So it's good to have a few 6mm going through the swim. I like to keep that swinging process going, like laying it in, picking it up, swinging it back out there past the pole tip. I like to keep doing that because it keeps that tight line between my pole tip and my float. So when I do get a bite, I'm in the best possible position to hit the bite. If I was to leave the float out there for ages, it might drift towards me slightly or off to one side, and you might get a bit of a bow. So when you do finally get the bite, you might miss it. Whereas if I just keep, as soon as I feel like it's out of position, I'll just re-swing it in every sort of 10 to 12 seconds, something like that, I'd say. No longer. So just keep swinging it in. And this is a bit more normal, to be fair. Those few bites then that I had were exceptionally quick. It's a great time of year to start shallow fishing because the fish, naturally, because they've been dormant for so long, without any sun on the backs, there's hardly any sun today, but there's enough that these fish are wanting to get a bit of warmth in them. And that is why they're very quick to come up. You may notice I'm just sneaking out to my full length of the pole. See what's happened there? The wind's caught it, which means we need to swing it in. And it's ever so easy to fish because there's no shots or anything on the rig to tangle. It's just the float on the line with your hook. So there's nothing to really tangle. It's that weighted down float sits straight away. It's heavy, so when you essentially casting it out, it just doesn't tangle. So whether you're slapping it or swinging it like this, it's just absolutely fantastic. Now what I'm going to do, I'm just going to sit back. I'm just going to put the sections on the roll and I'm just going to have it with the float back towards me. And I'm just going to have a minute putting a little bit of bait in without my pole there, because like I said, sometimes having your pole out there is what actually spooks the fish. I'm looking forward to having a go down here later. That's for another video. So sometimes just getting your pole out of the way, giving them a little bit of free food can really work. You'll notice I'm working out of the catapult. I'm just trying to ping just 3 to 4 pellets, regular. So I'm not seeing any fish now. A bit of wind's got up and stuff. And I have got a deck rig that if there was no fish or no signs of any fish, I'd happily put the deck rig on and have a go on the bottom, because they won't be far away. They might have just gone down in the water column. And once that wind's up, sometimes all it takes is a little bit of a breeze and it can push the fish down. There's one there at the back and there's one here, so they might come back again if I just ready. So sometimes learning to be patient with your pole away from your actual swim is very important. Just waiting. And this is really especially true when you're fishing for real big carp, because they can be a bit crafty, them big ones, and they know your pole's there. But sometimes they'll slip up and they'll just start coming into your feed zone when your pole's not there. So sometimes you watch people like Andy Powell. There's one here, look. There's one right under me where I've just left my pole. Go on. No, you ain't that stupid. We'll give it a few minutes there. Look, let's get out there. And you see the benefit of having the 8mm on, because it just gives me that little bit extra weight to get it out past. So when the wind's in my face like it is now, you need a bit of help sometimes. And of course, with shallow fishing, especially for carp, sometimes you do have to wait your turn. There we go. So the swim went a little bit dead, and we just came back with waited and allowed it, give them some free food, and then we've got one. And it's only taken 2 or 3 swings to get the next one. So hopefully there's something there for you to think about. That sort of stealthy shallow rig's so effective at this time of year. Like I say, we're still in March. As I film this, we're in March, but by the time you watch this, it's early April. But the same applies. The water's still a little bit clear. The fish are just waking up nicely. And this like stealthy sort of shallow rig can really work. There we go, lovely one to end on. And if you haven't already, oh there we go, lovely one to end on. So there we go, beautiful one to end on.